Hello and welcome to the 22nd video in the PHP e-commerce series. My name is Curtis and this is Free Skills. Alright, so check this out. In this video we're actually going to get to the point of logging the admin user in and putting checks in our pages that we want to protect. Okay, so in order to start this though, we need to talk about sessions. Now sometimes it's easier to learn what something is by comparing it to something else. And a lot of you, possibly all of you, have heard of cookies. Now a cookie is a little bit of information that we can store on the client's computer. So we could store just a little bit of information there, and it's usually, depending on the browser, limited to somewhere around 4 kilobytes in size. But it's just a little bit of information we can store, and a lot of times sites use cookies to store such things as login information and things like that, so that you can click remember me, and then the next time you go to a site, that cookie will be there and it will log you in based upon your cookie rather than you having to enter your login credentials again. Now a cookie is stored on the client side computer, and you have to set an expiration date on that. So they last a certain period of time. A session is essentially the same as a cookie. However, a session is stored on the server side computer rather than the client side computer. And a session doesn't need an expire time because a session is closed once the browser is closed. So once the connection is lost to the server, this session is destroyed. So if you want to store something securely that you don't want visible to anyone, you need to do it in a session, but that's only going to last temporarily while they're in that session. If you're storing something that doesn't much matter or that pertains only to that user, you can store it in a cookie. Now that being said, there are some countries that require you to, if you're using cookies, to display that to the end user, and sometimes they actually have to opt in or click I understand or I agree to using cookies. In the United States that's not so. That's where I'm shooting these videos. I know that the United Kingdom does have some laws about cookies. In this project we're going to be using sessions and cookies. So in this particular video, to log a user in, we're going to use sessions. So let's go ahead and open up our core init.php. Okay, in order to use a session, what we need to do is wherever we're going to use sessions, we actually have to make sure that sessions is started, and we do that with a pre-built PHP function called session start. Okay. And once that is called, we can use sessions after that. We can store sessions and get session information. Now, since I chose to put it in this init file because it's included on all of our pages first, so session start is going to run pretty early in the process. We're going to connect to our database, and we're going to require in our config file and our helpers, and then we're going to run session start. The other thing that we actually need to do is, let's go ahead and actually move this session start, and let's move it to right below our database connection. So right here, right after our database connection, let's go ahead and do session start there. That way sessions started, and if we want to use the sessions in our helpers, we can. Okay, so now that we have session start, let's go back to our login, and if you remember right in the last video, right here we're checking for errors or for our form to not validate here. And if the form does validate, what we're going to do is right here in this else statement, we're going to log the user in. So we're just going to call a function called login. Okay, we haven't created this function yet, but we're going to pass it the user ID that we're wanting to log in. So we need to get this user ID. Okay, and so in order to get this user ID, we have access to this user right here. So what we can do is we can say user ID is equal to user ID, okay? Because we have access to this user here, this associative array, and we can just grab the user from that. And then this will log the user in. Now we need to create that login function. So in order to do that, we're going to do that in our helpers file. So we're going to go ahead and open up helpers, and we're going to create our function here, and we're going to call it login. It gets the user ID parameter. So inside of this user ID, or this function here, we need to create the session. And to use a session, it's $_session. It's much like $_post, get, server, and session here, and meaning that it's a global array here that's created for us. So we have session, and then we need to give the session a name. And for me, I'm just going to use SB user, and this is case sensitive, and I'm going to set that equal to user ID. Now, this function is going to get this user ID passed into it from this login right here. When that happens, it's setting the session equal to user ID. Okay, once that happens, we're going to really quickly, let's go to open index.php now, and we're going to use this file kind of as our guinea pig here, and since we don't have much on it, and what we can do now is just echo $_session, and then we could say the SB user. That's what I'm going to call it. You can call it whatever you want, just remember it. So now, if I go ahead and log in here, and log in, it doesn't look like anything happens. We haven't told it to do anything yet. But now if I go to this index page, right here, I have that 1, and that's my user ID. And that's being displayed because that session has now been set. So let's add a few more things to our login function here. And the one thing that I want to do here is I want to update the last login in our database. So in order to use database inside of a function, we're just going to use global DB here. Okay, and then we have access to our database, and we can say DB. Well, we need to grab our date here, and we're going to use a pre-built function in PHP called date. And if we only pass the first argument in this date function is the format of the date that you want to use, and we're going to use what our database is expecting here. So it's going to be capital Y -M-D, which is the year, 4 digits, the month, and the date, numeric values, and then space, and then capital H, which is a 24-hour hour format, I for minutes, and S for seconds. This is what the database, how it saves the date, and so that's the way we need to save it into the date. So what this is going to do is put this date in this format into this date variable that we created here. Now what we can do is we can say database, our DB query, and what we're going to do here is update users, which is our database, our table that we created for our users, and we're going to do set last login equal to last login equal to date. Okay, and then for our condition, we're going to say where ID is equal to user ID. So that will update the date in our database for our last login. Let's go ahead and take a look at the database real quick. Right here in our users table, we have this last login here, and we want to be able to keep track of the last time the person logged in. So that's why we're doing it in this login function here. Okay. The next thing that we're going to do is we want to go ahead and set another session, and this session is going to be called let's call it success flash. Okay, and we're going to make that equal to you are now logged in. Okay, and then the last thing that we want to do is redirect and we're just going to redirect to index.php. Alright, so in order for this to work though, I need to get rid of this session, and I want to start over with the login. So what we're going to do is we are going to well, before we actually log in, let's do one more thing. Let's go to our init.php and let's create these session flash checks. Okay, and what I want to do is say if $_session, we'll say if is set $_session flash or success _ flash. If that's set, then what do we want to do? Well, we're going to echo. Alright, so what we're going to echo out of it, we're going to do a div with a class equal to BG danger. Okay, and then inside of that we are going to put a paragraph tag with a class equal to text success. And I just realized that I screwed something up here. We're also going to give this a class of text center, and then this doesn't need to be BG danger just yet. We're going to change that to success here. And then what do we want to echo out here? Well, let's break out of our echo statement here and concatenate on $_session and then success flash. Alright, so the next thing though that we want to now what's going to happen here is if this is set, it's going to echo all this out. The last thing we want to do here is we actually want to unset that session. So we're going to say unset $_session success flash, because we want if they navigate to a different page or reload the page, we want that to not show up every time. So this is only going to show up one time, and then it's going to unset that session. So let's go ahead and copy this whole deal here, and what we're going to do is do, instead of success here, we're going to do error flash, and then we're going to say, instead of BG success, we're going to say BG danger, and that's D, not B. And then here we're going to say text danger, and then for the session we need to echo out the error. Alright, and then we're going to unset that error flash, okay, that session. And that's how you unset a specific session, by the way. Just use unset and then the session. Alright, so what have we done? Well, we created this login function that's going to log it's going to set a session for the user ID. It's going to update the database here with the last login. Then it's going to create a success flash, and then it's going to redirect to the index.php. Now once the index.php is loaded, it's going to get down through this init file, which is included first, and it's going to see that there's a success flash, and it's going to echo that onto the screen, and then it's going to unset that session. So let's take a look at what that looks like. The first thing though that I need to do is just temporarily I'm going to do a function called session destroy, which is going to kill all of my sessions, which will get rid of my ID. So I'm just going to do that real quick. Okay, so now we have an undefined index because this has not been set on line 5, which is cool. So let's go ahead now and get rid of that session destroy and save this back out. And let's go ahead and go to login.php. So now if I enter my credentials correctly, hit login, okay, you see it takes me to the index page because of the redirect, and now I have this success message right here. It says you are now logged in. If I refresh the page though, that flash message is gone, and that's really cool because, well, we don't want that to stay the whole time we're on the site. Alright, it would even be cool if you want to take it a step further and use some JavaScript to only let that happen for like 30 seconds or 15 seconds or something, and then remove it. So that's some homework if you want to take on that. That'd be pretty cool. Let's go ahead and up here in our init file, let's go ahead, if there is a session set, we can actually get the user data so that we have access to it in other places on the site. So let's go ahead and do that really quick. And we're just going to say if is set $_session SB user. So then if that's set, then we know this session is going to equal our user ID. So we can actually use, we can say query equals, and we can say DB query, and we can say select all from users where ID equals, and then what we need to do is pass it in this, so we're going to say user ID is equal to $_session, whoa, getting away from me here, $_session, and then SB user. Oops. Alright, so then we have access to that variable, and we can just plug it in right here, and we can say user ID. Then what we can do is say user data is equal to MySQLi fetch a sock, and then we'll pass it in that query right there. Now what I also want to do is, we have this user data, and in our database we store the full name. So what I want to do is FN, sure, for full name, and this array is we're going to use explode function. Now what are we going to explode by? Well, it's just a space, because in our database most people will save it as, you know, first name space last name. And then what are we going to explode? Well, we're going to explode user data and then full underscore name. Alright, once that's exploded, then we can say, we can actually set user data of first, for first name, equal to FN 0 for the 0 index, and then we could say user data last is equal to FN 1. Okay, and that's coming from this explode here. It's creating an array called FN, and then it's going to separate the full name by a space. So the first name is going to be the first element of that array, and the last name will be the second element of that array. Okay, so now we have access to user data anywhere if this session is set. and we could use this user data. We can grab the first name, we can grab anything about this user that's stored in our database, like permissions, and we will need that permissions. Alright? So now what we can do is we can create a session. We're going to go to helpers, and we're going to create a new session, we can create a new function. So in helpers, we're going to create a function called is logged in. Alright? And that won't accept any parameters, and what we're going to do is say we're going to say if is set $_session of SB user. Now that could be anything you want. I just chose SB user. If that's set, we'll do one more check here, and I'm going to say and. We want to make sure this is an integer. So one way we can do that is just say and $_session of SB user is greater than 0. Okay? If that happens, I want to return true, and else I'm going to return false. So this is logged in. So now in the index, we'll just get rid of this echo here. And right after our core init, before we include our head or our navigation or anything, we can check now if the user's logged in. So we can say if, and I'm going to just pass in the is logged in function. Okay? And actually, I want to say if they're not logged in. So if not is logged in, then what are we going to do? Well, essentially what I want to do is redirect them to the log out. But I'm going to go ahead and create a new function here, and I'm just going to call this login error redirect. Okay? So we're going to call that function. So let's create that function really quick. So in our helpers then we're going to say function, and we're going to say login error redirect. And what we're going to do here is give it a default parameter, and we're going to give it URL, and that's going to equal login.php. And the reason we're doing that is because we could pass it in our URL here if we wanted to go somewhere else different than the login page, but we're just going to go to the login page. Okay, so this function, it doesn't need to do much, but what it's going to do is set a session. Okay, and the session that it's going to set is error flash, and we're going to set that equal to you must be logged in to access that page. And then we'll do a header, and then in the header we're going to say location space, and then we're going to concatenate on URL. That way this URL can redirect to wherever we want, but by default it's going to redirect to login.php. Okay, so now if I go to, we can actually, what we need to do is kill our sessions again. So we're just going to say session destroy, and we'll refresh the page here. Right, and then we want to save that. Oops, save that. Get rid of the session destroy. And now, if I try to go to index.php and I'm not logged in, it should redirect me to the login page and give me an error. Let's try it. Yep. So I try to go to the index.php, and now I get this error. It says you must be logged in to access that page. Doesn't look great with it here. It'd be better if it were here, but that's okay. So we get an error message that says you must be logged in to access that page. So let's see what happens now if I log in and I go to that page. So let's go ahead and enter my password here. Alright, so now it takes us to the page and you are now logged in. Great, that's exactly what we want to do. Alright, so now we can add this index check, just if statement right here to every one of our pages that we want to check if they're logged in or not. But let's go ahead now and let's create has permissions, because now we want to check on some of our situations. We want to be able to check if a user has a specific permission, and then we can set different permission levels for different pages. So I'm just going to create a function called has permission. Okay, and this is going to need a permission, and I'm just going to say permission and give it a default of admin, so that if they just say has permission, it's going to check if they're an admin user. So then what we can do, we have permissions string here, and what we need to do is create an array of their permissions. So we can say permissions equals, and we're going to use a PHP explode here. What are we going to explode by? Well, remember in a database we separated the permissions by comma. So we're going to separate by comma, and then we're going to check it against user data permissions. Okay, that's going to explode that string into this permissions array. So then what I can do is I can say if we can say if not, well, if in array, and then we need to tell it permission is for the first parameter, and for the second parameter we're searching inside of that array permissions, and then we're going to just pass true so it checks type for the third parameter. So what it's doing is checking if this permission of admin it exists inside of this array, and this array right here is what is created from this explode, and we're exploding from the user data permissions that's in our database. Alright, so if it's in that array, then what do we want to do? Well, we're going to return true, else we're going to return false. Okay, so what I can do now is in our index page, and we're probably not going to put this on our index page long term, but we're going to say if not has permission, okay, then what do we want to do? Well, we're going to do permission redirect, let's just say permission error redirect, which we haven't created yet. We'll do that really quickly. And this is going to create an infinite loop, so let's just redirect them to, with the URL here, we can redirect them to, let's say products, or let's just say brands. Like I said, we're going to change this later, but I just want to show how this is going to work. So then here, this login error redirect, we can just copy that, and we can call this permission error redirect. Permission error redirect, yeah. And we can just change a couple things here. We're going to change the flash, and we're just going to say you do not have permission to access that page, and that's it. So now if I refresh, what should happen is nothing. Oops. So something went wrong there. Let's for dump permissions die Undefined variable user data. Okay, so what's happened here is we're in this function here and we actually don't have user data. So what we have to do is we have to say global user data. So now, if I refresh that, we have an array here, admin and editor. So if I get rid of this var don't die, save it out. Alright, so now it can be on this page. But if I go to the database and just manually remove this admin part and refresh the page, it should then redirect me. Yep, you do not have permissions to access that page. So that's working. So now we have a permission check that we can use on whatever pages we want and give it whatever permissions we want, and we have just to make sure they're logged in. So I'm going to add admin back to my permissions. Remember, I separated by a comma, and now I should be able to go back to index.php. Yep. Alright, so that's good to go. So what I really want to do is I want to create a new file here in our admin area. We're going to work on this later, but I'm just going to create it now. It's going to call it users.php, because really this users.php is where I want to check if a user has permission to be there. So I'm going to copy, well, I'll just copy all of this. No, I'll just copy all of this here for now. Change this to users, even though we're going to change that later. And the permission, I want to make sure that they're admin, so I'm just going to go ahead and pass admin there. I don't need to, but I want to redirect to, instead of brands, we're going to redirect to index.php. So I could leave both of these blank, but I'm just going to leave them there so that we know what's going on. Alright, so then in my index page then, I'm going to get rid of this has permission because we don't want an infinite loop. I want if a regular editor I want them to be logged in, so I'm going to leave this, but I only want to check if they are have permissions of user on the users page, because I don't want regular editors being able to delete or add users themselves. Okay, that's kind of my thinking on that. So then what I'm going to do really quickly is open up all of our pages here that I want to protect with user login. And let's just go to our index page, and I'm going to copy this if statement here. And then in our products page, right below the init.php include, we'll save that. We'll do it on our categories. Just want to make sure they're logged in. Okay. Archived. Okay. We're not going to put it on login, obviously, because we want them to be able to log in. Alright, so now if I go and just really quickly go to index, and I'm going to do my session destroy function, and I need that to be inside of the PHP tags, obviously. Refresh. That killed my session, and then when I refresh again it takes me there. So let's go ahead and get rid of that session destroy. Okay, so now if I try to navigate to users.php, whoops. If I try to navigate to users.php, well, you must be logged in to access that page. If I try to navigate to index.php, you must be logged in. If I try to navigate to any of these products.php, must be logged in. So then if I log in now, I'm not going to save it. I can then navigate to each one of my pages, including my users page, which I haven't added to the menu yet, and I'm fine because I'm logged in. So I can actually go users.php, and then this is my users page. And if I go to the database and get rid of my admin access, okay, oops, get rid of my admin access and refresh, it takes me back to the index page and says, hey, you don't have permission to access that page. It doesn't matter how many times I try to go there, it won't let me do it. It'll just keep redirecting me. So let me fix that and add my admin back here, and we'll try to go to users now, and I'm good to go. Alright, so that's it. I know we kind of moved pretty quickly in this video, but we have created our sessions. We've created some functions to help us easily deal with checking if a user's logged in and if a user has permission to be on the page. We've also created some flash text that happens only once, and then once they refresh the page or navigate to another page, it's not there anymore. We've created quite a few helper functions that we can use throughout our application now, and let's go ahead and look at this helpers file again. So also what's really cool is if I look at my database, you can see that my last login now, so now that I check the database and browse, you can see that there was nothing really wrong with our function, but this now is updated to today's date and the time. So we've completed our user login on this video. I think on the next video what I'm going to do is we'll go ahead and create our logout, and we will create a change password so that we can change our password and log out. And then in the following video we'll go ahead and add our users table and the ability to add new users for administrators. So anyways, I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you have, please comment, like, and subscribe. And I will see you guys in the next video. Thanks for watching.